The purpose of practice. Jhanas can be an essential part of insight meditation. They can be used to develop the deepest possible insight into the essential features of our experiential world. The purpose of your meditation practice is to gain insight into the three marks of all existence: anicca, impermanence; dukkha, suffering; and anatta, selflessness. Noticing changes without greed, hatred, and delusion is the essence of your mindfulness practice. Your breath and your feelings are tools. So too are your perceptions, attention, intention, and consciousness. They are all tools. They can help you understand impermanence. Once you are aware of change, you can find yourself longing for the power to stop the change. Every thought, every sensation, including the good ones, the ones you want to hang on to, they all slip away. Unfortunately, you can't stop it. This is anicca, the impermanence of all existence. And that makes you disappointed. You feel the unsatisfactoriness of this situation. This is dukkha, the inherently dissatisfying nature of all samsaric experience. You realize there is nothing that can stop the change, and then you also come to see there is no myself to do the stopping, and no essence of thing out there to do it too. This is anatta, the inherently selfless nature of all samsaric existence. The fact that everything you can identify as a discrete thing or activity is actually an accumulation of subcomponents and has no inherent existence of itself. Thus, you come to experience the reality of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and selflessness. This is the knowledge and insight you gain from observing your own breathing, feelings, perceptions, intention, and consciousness. This is your mindfulness. You practice it either on the cushion or away from the cushion. You do it sitting, standing, walking, talking, and lying down. You do it while eating, drinking, wearing clothes, urinating, defecating, thinking, bending, stretching, running, writing, reading, performing any activity at all. It is all there for you to use, for insight. You can notice the impermanence of anything you're engaged in, without using words or concepts to label those activities. Impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, the selflessness are not merely words or ideas. They are the intrinsic nature of all conditioned things. This is the power of mindfulness, and jhana is where the pure truth of impermanence is seen deeply enough to carry over into all the other moments of your life. Let's look at each of the three marks of existence in more detail. Impermanence. Anicca is the Pali term for impermanence or change. It is a word worth learning. It says more than its English translations. Anicca is not just a word or concept. Anicca is real. It is experience of what is actually going on in your body and mind. Everything is changing constantly. Yes, you know this. You have heard all this before, and you agree. The chair you are sitting in will one day fall apart and go to the junkyard. That is impermanence, right? Well, yes, it is, but only at the most superficial level. Knowledge of change at that level will not heal you. It will not free you. It lacks the power and clarity to carry you to liberation. Unless you gain strong concentration, you will never see it at the deep and subtle level that makes you free. You need to sit in the place where the whole world of your experience is coming up and passing away so rapidly that there is just nothing to hang on to. Nothing lasts long enough for you to mentally glue it together into something. As soon as you turn your attention to any occurrence, it goes poof. It vanishes as soon as pure awareness touches it. It all just comes up and goes away, leaving no trace. There is no time for such a trace to be left. As each thing comes up, it pushes the last thing out of the mind and there is no residue. You come out of this experience with no solid memory of anything that occurred. There is just the lingering impression of everything arising and passing away more rapidly than the mind can hold. This is termed seeing things as they really are. You are not verbalizing or conceptualizing. You are just seeing. This happens in the awareness of your deeply concentrated mind. It all just comes up and goes away as a raging torrent without the slightest straw to grasp, to keep you from drowning. Yet you do not drown, because you are not really there. Me is just another thing that only exists when you glue your passing experience together in that artificial way. What does the seeing in this state is a calm, unruffled, pure watchfulness that does not get involved and does not exist as a thing. It just watches. When you see things this way, you lose interest in trying to hold on to things. You see that it is futile and harmful and cannot lead to any truth or happiness. You lose interest in the attachment that you have to all those very, very crucially important things you worry about in your life. Those things you just have to get in order to be happy. Those worries you just have to sidestep to avoid unhappiness. It cannot be done. They are not really there to grasp or avoid. And you are not really there to do the grasping or avoiding. It is all just ceaseless change in action. Grasping in this state is like trying to balance a tiny, tiny mustard seed on the tip of a moving needle. It is nearly impossible, and why should you bother? Yet the desire is still present to grasp onto something pleasing and joyful, and to run away from something disagreeable. You cannot do it, and you see the futility. You realize that this is the nature of my life, my body, my consciousness, all my ideas and memories and attitudes and wants and needs. They are all like this, fleeting, ephemeral, and fruitless. Even I am like this. Why is seeing impermanence so important? Impermanence is the slipperiest idea you have ever encountered and the most basic. It goes against everything you think you know about existence. The mind resists it, both subtly and grossly. It slides into the mind easily and then slides right out again just as easily, without any impact. And it must have that impact. It is the basic idea you need to make you free. You see things changing. You see it deeply down to the most incredibly fast moment-by-moment level. Then you see it more broadly. You perceive it in everything you see, in everything you ever could see. When you see anicca in all your experiences, your mind gets tired of this incessant change. This is the suffering, the dukkha, you experience in impermanence. This is the truth that the Buddha uncovered and expounded to us, saying, "Whatever is impermanent, it is suffering." Seeing suffering in all the aggregates of your experience, you become disenchanted. Being disenchanted, you become dispassionate. Passion is the gluing nature of your mind. Passion is the glue that holds the self and the world together as apparent units of being. When this gluing power is removed, there arises relinquishment, which leads to cessation of your suffering. You apply mindfulness and attention without concepts. Ideas and thoughts are thorns, boils, wounds, and impediments. Without them, you can focus the mind like a laser beam on the 5 aggregates. Then the mind can see that I exists only when the body, the feelings, the perceptions, the volitional formations, and the consciousness exist. They, in turn, exist within the parameters of impermanence. That burns everything. You don't find any self or soul or I in any of the aggregates. Suppose you put many components together and make a flute. When you blow it, it produces a sweet sound. Suppose someone breaks this flute into little pieces. He burns each of them in search of the sound in the flute. He will never find the sound. You will never find the I in the aggregates. That is your discovery of anatta. Not seeing impermanence, you tend to cling to impermanent things. You end up in suffering because impermanent things betray you when you try to hold on to them. They pull the rug out from under your feet. They deceive you. They make you believe that they are going to please you forever. They make you believe they are going to give you permanent happiness, that your life is going to profoundly change forever when you have this solid, enduring thing or relationship or situation. They cheat you. They cannot stop changing, but they give you the impression that they will not change or pass. They tell you that you can enjoy their company forever. When you see this undercurrent of unreality with the wisdom eye, you are no longer confused. You no longer think they are going to make you happy forever. Seeing the impermanence of everything, you take precautions against their deceptive, constantly departing nature. At this stage, effort, mindfulness, and concentration work as a team to open your wisdom eye so that you see everything related to the five aggregates as it really is, supported by the luminous mind and shining with brilliant mindfulness. Concentration and effort crack open the shell of ignorance. The wisdom eye breaks in and dispels the darkness of ignorance. It sees the truth of selflessness, suffering, and impermanence as they really are. Seeing impermanence with vipassana awareness. There are two levels of seeing change. You can see it with vipassana awareness or with jhanic awareness. Let's look first at the vipassana experience of change. You should begin every day with meditation, using your breath as the primary focus. As the breath becomes calm, subtle, and relaxed, the mind becomes calm and relaxed. The deeper you get into seeing this reality with unremitting energy, the more you will be filled with joy to see the truth unfolding within your experience in daily life. Each moment is a new moment. Each moment is a fresh moment. Each moment brings you new insight and new understanding. You begin to see things that you have never seen before. You attain what you have never attained before. You see things from a totally new perspective. Each new experience brings you refreshing, calming, cooling joy and happiness. Sometimes remarkable experiences accompany this new way of seeing the world. You may feel a calm and cool sensation spreading through your entire face, under your eyes, eyebrows, forehead, the middle of your head, and back of your head. You don't do anything artificial or deliberate to gain this happiness. It happens naturally when the conditions are ripe. Then you may experience a very subtle, very peaceful, but very sharp and clear vibration in your neck, shoulders, and chest area. As you go on breathing normally, simultaneous with this vibration, you may experience the expanding and contracting of the entire upper part of your body between the abdomen and the lower part of your navel. You may experience every tiny little cell all over your body vibrating and changing, rising and falling with an inconceivable rapidity. Not everyone feels this at the same points or in the same pattern. Some may experience this kind of phenomena elsewhere in the body or in another progression, or perhaps in a different way altogether. Do not go looking for this experience or think that something is wrong if you do not find it. The point is not the exact sequence of sensations. The point is what it means. There is nothing static. Everything is dynamic. Everything is changing. Everything is appearing and disappearing. Feeling arises and passes away. Thought arises and passes away. Perception arises and passes away. Consciousness arises and passes away. You experience only changing. You cannot experience anything that is not changing. Everything that you thought to be permanent is now seen to be impermanent and changing incessantly. You cannot make anything stay the same even for 2 consecutive moments. One moment seems to be pleasant and the mind wishes to keep it that way. Before the mind even makes this wish, it has changed. Mind moves with inconceivable rapidity. No matter how fast the mind moves to grab the pleasant experience, it changes before the mind reaches it. Its arising is like a dream. Millions of tiny little experiences arise and pass away before you blink your eyes. They are like lightning. No, much faster than that. You cannot keep up with their speed of change. You may think, let me see the beginning, duration, and passing away of this experience. Before this thought arises, the object of your sense experience have arisen, reached their maturity, and passed away. Sometimes your mind can catch the beginning of an experience, but your mind cannot see the middle or the maturity of it. Or sometimes you may experience the middle of it, but not the end of it. Sometimes you may experience the end of it, but not the middle or the beginning. However, you are mindful of this change. That is good. At least you can notice the changes taking place. It is even better to notice how fast they change. You experience impermanence all day long, all night long, every waking moment. In samsara, everything is permanently impermanent. At this point, you may feel as if you are breathing with the rest of the world. You may feel every tiny little creature, from little ants to great elephants, tiny fish to the giant whales, from small worms to huge pythons. All of them are breathing to your rhythm, or you are breathing to theirs. When you mindfully pay total attention to your body, feelings, perceptions, volitional formations, and consciousness, you experience every tiny little part of them constantly changing. When your mindfulness is established, your mind notices that every split second is new. Every molecule of your body, every feeling, perception, volitional formation, and consciousness itself, they are all changing incessantly, every split second. Your breath moves in and out with this change. Your feeling keeps changing. Your experience of this change, even that experience, is changing too. Your attention and your intention to pay attention to notice the change are changing. Your awareness is changing. When you hear a sound, you experience the change in the sound. You notice the change in any sound that hits your eardrum. If you keep paying attention to it, you notice that it is slowly changing. Similarly, any smell, any taste, any touch with the body, they all change constantly. Although they change all the time, you don't know that they change until you pay attention to them. A feeling arises that depends on sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and thought. This also changes. Any perception that arises and depends upon sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and thought, this also changes. Any state of consciousness that arises and depends upon sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and thought, this also changes. When you are paying attention to them, all of them change, just like when you are paying attention to your breath. Your feeling of the breath, your perception of breath, your attention to breath, your intention to pay attention to breath, and your awareness of breath, they are all changing. They rise, change, and pass without ceasing. Seeing impermanence in jhana. You also need to see impermanence at a very deep level. The minute and inconspicuous changes taking place in every moment of consciousness. Before attaining jhana, you know intellectually that everything is impermanent. When you experience jhana, you perceive impermanence at its most intense and subtlest level. Before you gain right concentration, your awareness of the impermanence of all phenomena is shallow. Now it is very deep and powerful. You have left thought and sensation behind, and your mind can penetrate impermanence more thoroughly than ever before. In jhana, the meditation subject as a thing has been left behind. The mind does not focus on any separate point besides its own collectedness. One-pointedness is the mind focusing on its own one-pointedness. This is a preconceptual awareness, a state in which mindfulness, concentration, and equanimity work together in unison without being disturbed by any of your sensory stimuli. This is not thinking about impermanence. This is experiencing it directly. True insight wisdom comes from this experience, not from mere thinking. What do you experience as impermanent? The jhana itself is all you see, and you see the impermanence of that. Your jhana comes and goes. The jhanic factors, like joy, happiness, equanimity, and one-pointedness, come and go and fluctuate. You clearly experience the impermanence of the jhanic factors themselves. You see the impermanent nature of everything that fills your awareness. Of all the jhanic factors, these realizations are not thoughts. They are dynamic actions or activities in the mind and body. The factors rise and fall and fluctuate, and your awareness of that fluctuates along with them. In jhana, your mind is not being affected by greed, hate, delusion, or fear. At all other times, words, ideas, concepts, or emotions interfere with your awareness of impermanence. Jhanic awareness is wordless. It is not thinking or speculation. It is not reflective or investigation. You have passed all that before you come to this level. This is the level where the mind sees things through the eye of wisdom. Words, thinking, investigation, or even reflection have no place. They would just get in the way. They are too slow and everything is moving too fast. This is an experience of pure impermanence, the impermanence of the experiencing awareness itself. Suffering. People ask, why don't we talk mainly about pleasure, joy, happiness, bliss, and peace instead of suffering? Because suffering, dukkha in Pali, is important. It motivates us toward the practice that can make us truly free. There is, of course, a certain degree of temporary pleasure in life. Life is certainly not without any pleasure. There is always some pleasure. But no pleasure comes without pain. What really dominates your life is not the pleasure, but the pain. Nearly everything you do in life is aimed at reducing and getting rid of this pain. The Buddha gave a few examples of suffering. You must look at these examples impartially. If you get emotionally involved in the word suffering, you simply suffer from your own misunderstanding, and you dislike the subject without ever understanding what it is. Before we move into our discussion in detail of the jhanas, let's look directly at a few classes of suffering. Birth is suffering. We enjoy our baby's birth. We celebrate it. Is that all we do with the baby's birth? We don't deny its pleasure and enjoyment. But is that all we have with the baby's birth? No. There are many more things. Just imagine the amount of suffering the mother goes through during the pregnancy. 9 months she suffers emotionally and physically to take care of the fetus. Sometimes she enjoys thinking that she is going to have a baby. At the same time, her anxiety is also growing. Her fear is growing. Her sense of insecurity is growing. Her discomfort is growing. The beauty she enjoys very much is changing. At the delivery of the baby, she suffers enormously. Some women die in childbirth. This is one fear many women have. They are also anxious about complications after birth. A woman never knows what kind of baby she is going to deliver. Healthy, unhealthy, beautiful, ugly, intelligent, not so intelligent, one with criminal tendencies. Once the baby is born, the mother and father must take care of the baby. They must sacrifice an enormous amount of their freedom, energy, and money to take care of the baby's education, well-being, happiness, peace, health, and general growth. Meanwhile, is the baby totally free from suffering? Most of the time, babies are born with a big cry. This cry continues throughout their lives, sometimes very loud, sometimes smoldering quietly inside them until it explodes with no notice. Growth is suffering. Children have anxiety about growing. Adults have anxiety about growing. Children's growing is called growing and maturing. Adults' growing is called old age. At every step of growing, you have to make some adjustment, willingly or unwillingly. This adjustment is not always pleasurable. You have to accept changing situations and give up old habits. This is painful for anybody. Sickness is suffering. You may think that sickness is suffering only when you are sick. When you are healthy, you may treat a sick person in a most cruel way. You may hate the sickness, but it will come to you too. Can you stop it with all kinds of insurance? No, you cannot stop sickness. Does not matter whether you are living in the most affluent country or the poorest country. You are subject to this. You can try to prevent some of the sickness, but some comes to you whether you like it or not. This really is painful, and it really is suffering. Old age is suffering. When you are very young, you may laugh at somebody when you see them trembling, walking unsteadily, talking with a tattered, wrinkled face and gray hair, not being able to cope with his own limbs. An old person cannot move as fast as he used to. He cannot talk as fast as he used to. He cannot eat as much as he used to. His flesh and muscles are not as strong as they used to be. Eyesight is not good. Hearing is not good. Teeth are not reliable. They fall out. They have to be replaced. He cannot do all the things he loved to do when he was young. Often there is pain. Is this not suffering? Death is suffering. Although some people kill others, when it comes to their own death, everybody trembles. When the mind is totally distorted and in disrepair, somebody may kill himself. But normally, everybody is afraid of death. When somebody is living a long life, he may say, "I am not afraid of death." This is true only when people are healthy and live long. When they come closer to death, they are afraid. We do everything to prevent death. This is the only truth we can never avoid. This is really painful, and it really is suffering. To be separated from loved ones is suffering. How many times have you experienced this reality in your own life? Have you felt this suffering when you separated from your friend, your partner, your parents, your brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, grandmother, grandfather, your sons, your daughters, your husband, your wife? You could lose your job or your ability to work at it. You could lose in a flood or a hurricane, for instance, all your property at once. And eventually, through trauma, disease, or at the very least, aging, you can even lose control of your body and even your mind. To be conjoined with an unloved one is suffering. You go to work. You have to work for somebody you hate. Is this pleasure? Your boss is very mean and giving you a very hard time. He treats you unfairly. Your landlord is very stingy. He does not fix your leaking roof. He increases your rent without giving you any additional service. Don't you think these situations are unpleasant? Even to get what you want is suffering. Suppose you get a very expensive car. See how much you love it. But you must maintain it. You must insure it. While you are taking care of it, very much like you take care of your own life, somebody scratches it. You meet with an accident. This causes you lots of suffering. All the 5 aggregates are suffering. Our aggregates, the constituents of our body and mind, are the home for all suffering. If the aggregates did not exist, no suffering would exist. The 5 aggregates are form, feeling, perception, volitional formations, and consciousness. Form requires maintenance. Your body is a form. As everything is happening to the body, you experience physical pain. You feel hunger, so you eat. You feel the need to urinate, so you urinate. You feel the need to defecate, so you defecate. None of those things are very pleasant. You experience heat, cold, and thirst. You must take care of them. You must wash the body. You must clothe it. You must take care of your physical health by eating right, exercising, and resting. You must do all these things every day. In order to maintain this body, you must have the means, money, a house, clothes, food, water, good air, and many more things. Without them you cannot maintain this body. You must work very hard to obtain all the means to support this body. This is suffering. Feeling needs to be maintained in the same way. Every time your senses come in contact with their respective objects, this thing called feeling arises. You don't like unpleasant feeling. You always want the pleasant feeling. You always look for something that can give you happiness and avoid unhappiness. This is a real struggle. You eat, drink, sleep, rest, meditate, play games, sing, dance, and do many more things to make yourself happy. Nevertheless, you still are not happy, are you? Come on, admit it. Your feelings are not easily satisfied. This is suffering. Perception also needs to be maintained the same way. You always encounter conflicting perceptions. However you perceive something to be right now, it will change. And the change does not feel right. Somebody will come up with something that does not agree with your perception. You are in constant conflict with others with regard to your perceptions. This is suffering. Volitional formation or thought creates more pain for you. Deciding is a problem. You think your decisions are perfect. Soon you find out somebody has made some other decision which is approved by many, and your own is looked down upon. They may think your mind is full of greed, hatred, and delusion, and with these emotional states you have made the wrong decision. Their decisions have also been influenced by greed, hatred, fear, and confusion. Nobody seems to be able to make a clear and perfect decision. We keep changing our decisions, looking for new and better ones. This is suffering too. Consciousness is even trickier. You like to maintain a clear consciousness. Unfortunately, you cannot hold on to any consciousness for even 2 consecutive moments. As it is changing faster than the speed of light, you end up in frustration. Selflessness. The Buddhist teaching of no self says that the person I think I am is, in a certain way, not real. At least not in the way I conceive it and enact it in my daily life. But it's important to understand that this isn't a doctrine or a theory. It's just a description of what Buddhists generation after generation have verified as true. The self is an aggregation, a collection of subcomponents that can be broken down endlessly. Similarly, anything your mind can identify as a discrete item is actually an accumulation. There is no real self anywhere, not in you, not in anything you sense or can identify. The words no self point to a state beyond words. In our current condition, our attention catches or snags on most of the things we feel, perceive, and think. We want some things and hate other things, and ignore everything else. Our lives are spent trying to get things, avoid things, achieve things, and run away from things. It all stems from a basic feeling of I, me, mine. We unconsciously think things like I am crucial. What I think and want and say is true and counts more than the opinions of others. All religious traditions agree that selfishness lies somewhere near the root of our problems. No self is a mode of perception in which me moves to the background and our attention flows smoothly through the world without snagging or catching on anything. Our attention is turned outward, and we see things clearly. We are naturally attentive to the needs of others. We can learn this state of attention without changing our religious ideas at all. The jhanas are particularly instructive in this respect. They are states of existence in which we move beyond our wants and needs and fears. We move into joy. We bring back peace and contentment to our lives, and we find that we have not dissolved our personalities, gone crazy, or lost our souls. After that we may, if we wish, retain whatever concepts we wish about soul and afterlife and leave the philosophical hair-splitting to others. Some historical background on selflessness may be helpful. The Buddha was born into Brahmanism, the religious context of ancient India. He saw clearly that the religion and philosophy of his society were simply not working. The doctrines were centered on the concepts of karma and reincarnation, and a hard and fast idea of the self, called Atman. Religious activity was in the hands of a priestly caste called Brahmins. You needed to be born into this caste in order to interact with the gods, and the observances took the form of repetitive, empty rituals. Other castes essentially hired the Brahmins to perform the rituals. No one was getting even partially free, except a few ascetics who lived in the forest and devoted themselves full-time to yogic practices centered on austerities. The doctrine of Atman was not setting people free. The Buddha saw this as a problem and taught the idea of anatman, literally, no self. The no-self experience. So what is the experience of selflessness? It is simply the act of not seeing a collection of constantly shifting phenomena or perceptions as a single fixed entity. What is it really? It is actually a collection of phenomena or perceptions. When we use the notion of self, we always use it in reference to forms, feelings, perceptions, volitional formations, and consciousness. Under very close examination, however, we don't find anything that can be identified as this self. Although there is no such separate entity as self, we use it as a conventional term to make our communication easy. Without using I, me, or mine, our day-to-day communication becomes impossible. Just try it sometime. Try to get your point across without ever referring to me, or I, or mine. We need terms like myself, herself, himself, or itself to say what we mean. And both the words and the concept of self are important for navigating the everyday world. But this does not mean that the collection of shifting things is a single fixed entity. By seeing all forms, feelings, perceptions, volitional formations, and consciousness with the attitude, this is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself, you can abandon the false notion of I. It's not easy, but it can be done. You can begin to escape from the delusion of self by viewing things like past, present, and future as mere conventions. Any comparative or evaluative thought is just a theory that includes things like internal versus external, gross versus subtle, inferior versus superior, and far versus near. We have a widespread agreement to use these concepts, but that is all they are. They are concepts. You cannot find them. You cannot experience them. You can only think about them. Thinking in this way is very useful when applied to the exterior world. This is what has made humans the dominant species on the planet. But using such terms to apply to inner experience is fraught with hazards. Have you ever seen Sunday or Monday? You say it is 12 o'clock. Have you ever seen 12 o'clock, except on a dial in a clock? If you don't have a clock, how do you know it is 12 o'clock? And how about the clock itself? When many parts are put together, you call it a clock. When those components are taken apart and separated, do you see a clock? No. All you see is a collection of pieces. The clock is a concept you use to refer to those pieces when they are put together in a particular way. You could take the same pieces and put them together some other way to create an entirely different shape, and you would not perceive it as a clock. The self is like that. A collection of components hanging together in a special way. Explore it, take it apart into its components, and it melts and disappears. The scent of a lotus does not belong to the petals or to the stalk, or to the pistils. The scent belongs to the whole flower. Similarly, you speak of form, feelings, perceptions, volitional formations, and consciousness as I am. You never speak of this I am apart from form, feelings, perception, volitional formations, or consciousness. I am is a concept that only applies to the entire collection of the aggregates. You only use I to refer to the whole assemblage when they are combined in a specific way. The notion I am exists in us only in relation to these 5 aggregates that are subject to clinging. Yet, we do not regard any one thing among the aggregates as this I am. Suppose you send your clothes to a laundry to clean. They will clean them using various detergents. When the clothes are returned, you may find some lingering smell in the cloth. Then you put them in a sweet-scented drawer. The residual smell of cleaning vanishes. Similarly, when a person dwells contemplating the rise and fall of the 5 aggregates that are subject to clinging, a number of things are uprooted. The residual conceit, I am, is seen to be just that, a concept. The desire we call mine, and the view we express as myself, are both uprooted. They just fade, like the smell in the clothes. At this point we have laid the groundwork in both theory and, hopefully, practice to be able to turn our full attentions to the jhanas in detail, and then later to how to cultivate and practice them.